When Europe pioneered industrial capitalism, her demands on the resources of the world increased dramatically. Africa emerged as a prime location for colonization due to its wealth of natural resources and undeveloped economies ripe for exploitation. The first objective of colonialism is political domination. Its second objective is to make possible the exploitation of the colonized country. Not only did European colonization devastate traditional African societies and economies, but it also took a huge toll on its wildlife when tens of thousands of elephants were slaughtered for their ivory. By the time gold was discovered in southern Africa, the European plunder was in full swing. This time, the farmers who resisted were the victims, and more than 30,000 women and children died in internment camps, while the country's assets were pillaged during what became known as the British Scorched Earth policy. When finally the colonial flags were lowered, Africans started picking up the pieces. Wildlife was captured and released into reserves where they would be protected. Species that were on the brink of extinction were reintroduced to former habitats. The first tentative steps towards active wildlife management had been taken. The economic value combined with the intrinsic value of wildlife meant that the land use had been secured and the fauna began to flourish. When private ownership of wildlife was legalized in many southern African states and the monetary value of conserving biodiversity became apparent, the colonialists decided it was time to take another bite at the cherry. Animal rights organizations were created. Their business model, donor farming, based on emotional and unscientific arguments against sustainable utilization. They infiltrated wildlife trade bodies and bought votes to influence wildlife trade decisions. They are the only beneficiaries of the hundreds of millions of donor dollars collected, which goes primarily toward supporting their lifestyle and has no benefit to wildlife or little regard to the rural communities that are forced to share their habitat with the wildlife. We'll expose the misinformation by those who want you to buy into their business model of donor farming, as well as the greenwashing by politicians who drive the animal rights agenda in government. The animals in rural communities deserve better than the distortion of facts by those who pretend to care about conserving biodiversity.
Hallo, ich heiße Naita Hishono und ich bin die Direktorin des Namibischen Instituts für Demokratie hier in Namibia. Unser Mandat ist Hello, I'm Naita Hishono and I'm the director of the Namibia Institute for Democracy. As with many progressive African nations, the sustainable use of natural resources is enshrined in their constitution. We'll be visiting community conservations throughout the country to establish firsthand what the contribution of sustainable utilization of wildlife is to conservation and to rural communities. We will weigh this up against animal rights organizations' claims that neither communities nor conservation benefits from conservation hunting. You be the judge.
Born Free's position is very clear. We are opposed to the killing of any animal for sport or pleasure, and we challenge the claims made by proponents of trophy hunting that it delivers significant conservation and community benefits.
Then from here I'll be taking you to the school. You will see the 2 blocks which was built from the money of the trophy hunting. So there is a very big benefits from trophy hunting.
And I haven't seen any evidence that there's anything more than a very tiny amount of any money, any of the funding actually goes towards conservation or towards the local community or towards the protection of other animals.
We used to pay the anti-poaching people who are busy patrolling the conservancy. If we stop hunting in Balera, all of these activities will stop because there's no money.
If we stop the hunting here, if we ban trophy hunting, buffalo and hippo will no longer have any value. They'll be poached. Fishermen and livestock will replace the wildlife and the trees will be cut down to produce charcoal.
The conservancy is weg, die game guards is weg. Und es herrscht wieder wie für 15 Jahre Chaos hier.
There is an entirely spurious claim that trophy hunting in some way contributes to conservation. It does not, and that is an absolute lie.
The first thing which will happen if trophy hunting is banned, people will start with illegal hunting. Poaching will take place.
Income from trophy hunting pays for boreholes and water tanks, the school fees for the children, and the game rangers. This community received $9 million Namibian dollars from conservation hunting.
In this 3 or 5 years that I've got to lease, you will provide 3 boreholes, equip them with solar to get fresh water. You will provide anti-poaching with uniforms. You will provide jobs for the people in this area. So this includes tracker, skinner, general work, manager, anti-poaching.
We feel that these communities should feel the tangible benefit that they derive from these animals. Trophy hunting, for instance, or what we call conservation hunting, becomes part of our conservation programs.
Daning, what's your role as the president of the Namibian Professional Hunters Association, in short, NAFA?
NAFA secures and makes sure that everything that we do and that our business really runs according to certain ethics and certain standards, because we truly believe in ultimate conservation and habitat protection. So my role as president at NAFA basically is just to secure the future of hunting in this country, because it's a viable and an extremely important sustainable use tool that Namibia have at the moment.
The animal rightists, the donor farmers, don't just want to end trophy hunting, but hunting in its entirety. What would the outcome be?
Because we've got these wild open spaces, we've got habitat and fauna and flora like crazy, and we want to showcase it to the world. Imagine coming over here as a tourist and you think of Africa, you've got this certain picture of Africa in your mind's eye, and you want to experience that, you want to see that, you want to live that. But imagine coming here and it's fences everywhere, it's cattle and sheep, or it's cities, and it's there's no Africa left. And that's the one thing Namibia still have, is habitat, because without habitat we can't have these beautiful wildlife and these beautiful animals roaming around. So, and ultimately hunting is the one thing that protects habitat. No hunter wants to come here and see buildings and see fake areas and fences. He wants wild Africa. So it's the one thing that honestly protects habitat fiercely. And the sustainable use of that resource brings me economic value.
There's a call that conservation hunting should be replaced with phototourism. I visited the NAFA office in Windhoek to find out if it was a realistic option and whether there was any peer-reviewed research that compared the income from phototourism to that of hunting tourism.
Schon gesagt, das ist in keiner Relation zueinander.
Replacing conservation hunting with phototourism is wishful thinking. It's not really something that could work in practice. Phototourism isn't possible throughout Namibia because the landscape is so vastly different. You have an X number of photo tourists during the year, and then you have Y number of hunters. I don't believe that if you stop the hunters, then suddenly thousands of photo tourists will replace them and replace the income from conservation hunting.
Nicole, ich sehe, du hast da eine
What about the income comparison between photo and conservation hunting?
Welche Art von Tourismus ins Land? Kannst du uns das noch mal erklären?
We compiled a position paper in 2016 and then updated it 2 years ago. You can just see what the financial impact of conservation hunting in Namibia is and what income it generates. If you look at an eco-tourist, for example, a photographer, that brings around 6% of the income for a farm, where a trophy hunter brings in around 44% of the income. So when the anti-hunting activists are ready to send through enough photo tourists here to make up for the difference, then we can talk about it. But I can't see that happening.
Wenn die Europäer bereit sind, so und so viel Fototouristen herzuschicken, dann kann man drüber reden. Aber ich kann nicht sehen, dass das passiert.
Maxi, you're the director of NACSO and you're the chairperson of the Community Leaders Network of Southern Africa. What is your role? What is your mandate?
So my name is Maxi Lewis, and I work for a network of civil society organizations in Namibia, and we support a program called the Community-Based Natural Resource Program, but it's also known as conservancies. So conservancies are rural communities that are doing community conservation, so they're involved in looking after their natural resources in communal areas in Namibia, and wildlife is very key in terms of that role. So we play the role of service provision to these communities. Then I have another role. I'm the chairperson of the Community Leaders Network, that is communities that have organized themselves to be a voice in Southern Africa, and they're also looking after their natural resources and wildlife, and we try to address issues around community rights, community livelihoods, looking at land rights. And so yes, that's what I do as part of the 2 positions that I held.
So Maxi, what does that mean for Namibians if there is no more trophy hunting and no income for the conservancies?
In Namibia, we have around 86 of those conservancies. Around 80% of those communities in conservancies depend on hunting. So their livelihoods is derived from income that come from both what we call conservation hunting, which is trophy hunting. So by mere fact that you remove hunting, first of all, as Namibians and as Africans in general, we do depend on hunting. So by just taking that away, you are actually taking people's livelihoods. I normally want to explain it in this way. This is the bread and the butter for those communities. It's like anybody else in Germany having a job going, and you come back to your family and you feed them. That's what they do. That's their income, that's their livelihood. And if you take that away from them by closing all the markets, you are making it very difficult for those communities as a right, as a human being, just to have a life. So if you take somebody's life away, what does that mean? They are dead. So you are actually killing them. You are killing their livelihoods. That's what it is.
You sent a letter to the anti-hunting campaigners, the donor farmers.
This is the letter that we wrote in terms of letting them know that their manifesto is very contradictory in terms of what they need to serve and respect, because they don't respect us. They made a decision that is going to destroy the livelihoods and the bread and butter of our communities. So we are still open. We want them to come. We want them to sit around the table and we can have this conversation. At the moment, there was no response on our letter. They just shut the door in our faces by not coming back to us.
I'm not a hunter. In fact, it may surprise your viewers to hear that I'm actually a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian since the age of 11, but I see from an intellectual and from a biodiversity and from a biological point of view, I see the value of trophy hunting to conservation. And I stand up for it and I defend it. It has to be done right. Animal welfare issues need to be taken into account, but keep in mind that animal welfare and animal rights issues are 2 totally different things. So by undermining trophy hunting, you're undermining the commitment which people in Africa have to live with their wildlife. You're taking away the incentives, the tools we have to promote good conservation so that we don't end up like Europe has ended up without its most charismatic wildlife. They're taking away those tools from us to be able to encourage and convince farmers, let's live with these things. Let's get some benefits from them. Because those people in the NGOs in Europe that are convincing people and getting money from them to try and stop trophy hunting, they're not sending that money to Africa. No, they're living a very good life in Europe. They're not sending that money to Africa. We have the problem, and they make the money trying to stop us and undermine the tools we have to make it work. If we think back to the 1960s in Namibia, for example, all the wildlife in the country was owned by the state. And the farmers, whether they were private farmers on freehold land that they owned, or they were communal farmers in villages in the rural areas of the country, they had no rights over that wildlife. So wildlife was just a source of problems to people. Grazed the grass which their animals had to eat, particularly in times of drought, and the predators caused problems with their livestock, and the elephants caused problems with their stock, with their crops and so on. The farmers got together and they put pressure on the government to say, your animals are eating our grass, which we want for our domestic stock. Please come and take them away. They're just a problem to us. So the government had to come up with a plan of what to do. Their solution was to devolve rights over wildlife to the farmers. Now, during the apartheid times in South Africa, that devolution didn't extend to the communal areas. It just went to the freehold farmers. But that allowed the farmers to start to develop enterprises, start to develop wildlife-based industries, which included some tourism, but mainly meat production and trophy hunting, and then the live sale of surplus high-value animals. And that led to a total change in the perception of farmers and landowners over their wildlife. Wildlife started to increase in numbers. Farmers started to look after it. They started to buy animals from other areas and reintroduce them on their land. So the range of wildlife in Namibia increased hugely, and the numbers increased. As soon as independence came to Namibia, a group of us worked together to try and get those same rights that the freehold farmers had moved across also to the communal farmers. And the process that we set up there was the conservancy process. The other important thing that's happened is that wildlife numbers have increased. They've doubled and doubled again, and from that 500,000 in the 1960s, 1970s, we're up to about 3 million head of wildlife today in the country. So just because of that devolution of rights where people have business opportunities around wildlife, that they have a value and people want them. The second really important part of having a landscape approach is that you've got connectivity across the landscape. So you've got national parks, you've got communal conservancies, you've got private protected areas, private conservancies, linking into these huge landscapes across Namibia. And let me just give you an example of that. One of the biggest landscapes in the world is the landscape we have along our entire coast from South Africa, from the Orange River, all the way up our coast to the Cunene and Angola and Iona National Park, and then linking to that privately protected areas, communal conservancies, linking between Skeleton Coast Park and the Etosha National Park, and that block of land is a contiguous piece of land under wildlife of almost 25 million hectares.
Bei den Huanzi-Sans und wir sehen jetzt hier, wie sie eine Wildfalle nachstellen.
Collectively, the Khoisan are recognized as the oldest people on the planet. Since time immemorial, they survived on hunting. Whether snaring fowl and small antelope or hunting game with a bow and arrow, the culture has depended on these skills for over 22,000 years.
Solange das Konzept von Conservancies und der
While conservancies and sustainable hunting can be maintained here in Namibia, there will be enough game for the local population, for the Khoisan, for the traditional authorities, and for the people who live here in the conservancies. But if conservation hunting is abolished, it will simply be replaced by poaching, and the land use will become agriculture-based, cattle breeding as an alternative source of income.
Dann kann das zu Wilderei wieder führen. Und dann muss man an alternative Einnahmensquellen denken, wie zum Beispiel die Rinderzucht.
I work for a safari company. I have 4 children, and the money that I get here, I use to send my children to school and to support my family and to support myself. What will I do if the hunting stops? Where will I get the money? How will I support my family?
I'm here in the Nai Conservancy with a hunting operator and a professional hunter. Stefan, thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us. People always want to know how many animals were there before conservancies and how many are there now, especially when we talk about elephants.
1982, there was 52 elephants counted by aerial count in Nai Conservancy. Today, depending on season and drought, we have between 2,000 and 3,000 resident elephants in the Nai Conservancy. So it's a multiplication of thousands of percent from the 80s to where it is today.
How many elephants can the Conservancy take?
That has to be scientifically based, but what I can gather over the years is that they say if you see the elephants is starting to eat the baobab trees or is starting to vandalize the baobab trees, you know that you are very close to your ceiling number of elephants in a certain area. And I've only noticed now the last 3 to 4 years that the elephants has actually started vandalizing the baobab trees. So I think we are very close to the amount that this conservancy can actually sustain without damaging the habitat.
What is the quota, the hunting quota?
We only get 9 a year out of this conservancy.
9 elephants for the professional
Yes,
hunters.
9 in total that
9
we
in
can
total.
utilize. Yeah.
Does this 9 elephants include what the Conservancy can have for own use, or is it just for the hunters?
I utilize the own use elephants as well, so I pay the Conservancy for the own use elephants that hunters hunts as well, just for the experience of the hunt. So we only get 5 trophy bulls a year and 4 non-trophy bulls or own use bulls a year. So 9 in total can be utilized in this area. It's also important to state that we only hunt males. We don't utilize any females. I also take pride in saying that I search for the oldest elephant males that I can find in this conservancy to hunt. On average, I walk 186 kilometers for every elephant that I hunt in this area. On average, I look through 114 elephant bulls before I find one doesn't have a part in this society of elephants in this area. And then we utilize that elephant. If you look at the total income statistics of Nai Conservancy, I think the last 3 years or even more, 87 or 89% of the income of this conservancy came from sustainable hunting. Also, a very big benefit that is also benefited out of the hunting is actually the meat distribution. You must know that out of the quota that we have at this stage in Nai Conservancy, we distribute about 38 tons of meat between the people in Nai on an annual basis. It actually comes down to about 20 kilograms per person per month in the area.
If the farmers start now, start animal husbandry here, would they have enough of an income as an alternative? Is that their way of life here in the Conservancy?
If you look at the San people are naturally hunters. They are not livestock keepers. They are naturally hunters. And what would be a lifestyle for them other than what their traditional lifestyle is? You know, that's something that I do not understand, is that most Europeans come to Nai and they say, it's unbelievable, you guys have got so much tradition. We wish we had that much tradition back in Europe. But the very first thing they want to do is take away the tradition of the Sun people by forcing them not to be able to hunt.
Hier heute in Sumkwe bei der Nai Conservancies. Uncle Jerry is the chairperson of the Human-Wildlife Conflict Committee in the Nai Conservancy. Mr. Basi Nakanuku will translate Uncle Jerry's discussion. Für mich auf Afrikaans.
Uncle Gerry, as you know, there are animal rights activists trying to stop hunting, and hunting trophies being imported into Europe, Britain, and the United States. What we want to know is, what do you think of the activism, and how will it affect your community if it succeeds? These movements, these activists that want to stop the hunting, I would like them to rethink what they are trying to do and think about what effect it's going to have on us and to our people, and to our community, and the animals if they do this. It's going to have devastating effects, not only to the people, but to conservation as well.
Mr. Alfred Shadao is a game ranger in the Babata National Park. We asked him about the outcome that a ban on hunting would have on the community and what is his role as a game ranger.
Oder gibt es auch Alternativen? Und was ist die Rolle des Game Rangers?
So, if you to stop hunting, then people like us who are surviving out of hunting, we are all dead. And once we go out for the patrols, once you see predators, then you record in the book. And there is other one, we just do a fixed route patrol, where you just go straight in the certain route, then you do the recording for the animals that we normally use it for trophy hunting and those other type of species. For us to know how many elephants are we having in the park.
The community of Babata National Park practices sustainable hunting. The community receives the meat and trophy fees of the hunted animals. This solar-powered borehole and water tank were funded as part of a $2.9 million Namibian income from a previous financial year. Households were also provided with electricity. Without an income from conservation hunting, the community will not be able to afford school fees for the children, or transport or pay game rangers, or maintain boundary fences, or even general maintenance. Hunting is crucial to this community. It's their only source of income. These elephant bones are the remnants of a protein feast from the meat that the community gets from hunters.
Nachdem die Tiere gejagt worden sind.
I'm Divana Biskachner. This is Babata East National Park, 700,000 acres of pristine wilderness.
Please tell us about the hunting in the Babata National Park.
So, the government gives a hunting quota to hunt this park. And this is so important, you know, because the people here, we have the Kwe Bushman people live here. They'll have a direct benefit, not only protein, but they'll have a financial benefit. So does MET, because this is a park. It's not a communal conservancy.
The alternative to hunting, when the animal rights activists get their way and there's no more trophy hunting and no hunters coming,
Yeah.
What is the alternative? What is it going to look like on the ground here?
It's going to look terrible. I mean, we have national parks, and national parks are a safe haven for animals to some sort of an extent. But what people don't realize is that 70% of wildlife occurs outside of national parks. So what's happening to those wildlife? They're going to get poached. Elephants are going to be killed, ivory are going to be sold, buffalo will be chased with dogs and speared, and there's no value. This is going to be lost to people and plow. It's going to be maize fields. There's going to be cattle running around everywhere. Look at Kenya. They stopped hunting 78 and they've lost, what, like 70% of their wildlife. In Bubwata East, I believe that there's any given day of the year, there's between 2,000 and 4,000 elephants in here. There is a lot of elephant here. There's a lot of buffalo. I mean, some people say that Caprivi is home to more than 25,000 buffalo. That, I mean, I'll go and show you now. You'll see the lechwes, the impalas. There's just an abundance of wildlife here. And where is it? It's in the hunting areas, because it's regulated, because it's got a value, it's been looked after.
Okay, when we stop hunting in Balerwa, the game guard were not getting anything. We used to pay the anti-poaching people who are busy patrolling the conservancy. If we stop hunting in Balerwa, all of these activities will stop because there's no money. The meat that is going to shoot today or killed today, it's for the traditional authority. That meat is going to be eaten there.
Here we've got an own-use buffalo that was shot for a traditional authority. So not only do we as outfitters tender for trophies, tender for this area, but we also have a obligation to hunt for own use, which is where we shoot an animal and it gets distributed among the villages. Obviously you put in your tender, not only for your trophy animals, but also you do a tender and you say, for example, listen here, in this 3 or 5 years that I've got the lease, you have, or you will provide 3 boreholes, equip them with solar to get fresh water. You will provide anti-poaching with uniforms. You will provide jobs for the people in this area. So this includes tracker, skinner, general work, manager, anti-poaching, game guards, uniform, tents, everything. So it's a big deal at the end of the day.
From a scientific perspective, particularly in the field of conservation biology, we're starting to realize more and more that conservation is much more about people than it is about animals. So biology is a study of animals, it's 100% animals. Conservation biology is 90% humans and 10% animals. If human beings decide that they no longer want a particular species of animal to live on this earth, we will eradicate it. We are perfectly capable of doing so. So if you are going to conserve wildlife, your priority has to be the humans. And it has to be about their perspectives, their views, their feeling of being heard, their rights. And this thing is exactly the same. It's human beings or human beings, whether they are a rancher in America, a smallholder in Europe, someone in Asia, a person living out in the northwest in Namibia, a Himba person. They all have exactly the same sort of perspectives. And if you take away control, if you take away their ability to make decisions, and if you trample their rights, the ultimate consequence of that is it doesn't come back to the people who took away their rights, it comes back to the animals. Because human-wildlife conflict is often termed a battle between humans about wildlife. So the trophy hunting thing, especially in the context of Namibia, it's not so much about the hunter and it's not so much about the trophy. It's about Namibians' rights, their rights to their wildlife and their rights to do something about that wildlife. So in Namibia, that is why they call it conservation hunting, because the term trophy hunting is about the trophy that the person coming takes back with them. But as far as a Namibian is concerned, they don't care what you put in your lounge in Europe. If you want to decorate it with tusks, if you want to decorate it with a lion's head or whatever, that's not their concern. They don't care what you do with the trophy. You can burn it. But what they do care is the impact of what are you bringing into our economy, what are you contributing, and if you can contribute, and you want to take a little trophy away with you, well, that's fine. Most of the time, those trophies aren't eaten anyway. It's things that are inedible. The animal's head, for example, or skin. But the meat stays with the people, and the people consume the meat. So what you do with the head or the skin is not a Namibian's concern. But what we can do with that money is we can put it into conservation. So from a Namibian point of view, they call it conservation hunting, because they're using hunting to drive conservation in Namibia.
Good morning. We'd like to welcome everybody to this webinar for the All-Party Parliamentary Group on banning trophy hunting. The objectives of the group are to secure a comprehensive and properly enforced UK ban on all trophy hunting imports, and for Britain to be a global leader in helping to end trophy hunting. Professor Phyllis Lee joins us from the University of Stirling, where she has been since 2005. She's been studying wildlife since 1975, including the impact of trophy hunting, and is Director of Science for the Amboseli Trust for Elephants, which is based in Kenya.
Hunting for the pot, as we all know, is part of human evolutionary history, but that's not what we're debating here. Most hunting by UK residents in an age of supermarkets is not for the pot, but it's part of a competitive extractive industry that's called trophy hunting.
My questions, one of the first ones was, why didn't you invite a Namibian to this platform? Because they do have a good working model. And Kenya is welcome to do what Kenya does, but they do not do trophy hunting. So if I want to know what is going on with trophy hunting, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I would ask someone from a country that has trophy hunting. Because if I live here and someone wants to know about wolves, why would they ask me? Like, you know, how do you live with grey wolves? I'd be like, well, I don't know. I don't live with grey wolves. I don't live there. So to ask a Kenyan about trophy hunting, the last time they dealt with trophy hunters was in the mid-1900s. So the opinions, one of the questions I asked was, if you're going to talk about trophy hunting, you need community representatives, you need people from countries that actually do trophy hunting, and then you get a better view.
World-renowned conservationist and primatologist Jane Goodall.
I have spent a great deal of time in Africa with Africans. I've spent a lot of time with game rangers. None of them believe that banning trophy hunting is dictating to them. They feel that we are helping them.
Most of the people, that means it's 5,000 members living in Doti who are depending on trophy hunting.
Then people like us who are surviving out of hunting, we are all dead.
So this particular webinar was for the public. And one of my main concerns is that the voting public, they need the correct information. They need facts. And if you're going to give them facts, you've got to have the right people giving those facts, and the right people are the scientists and the people who work and live on the ground. So community representatives are absolutely critical to give their views and their perspectives, and scientists who have looked at the data, the patterns, the bigger picture, they're also important. Unfortunately, there were none of the above at this particular webinar, and it's unfortunate because if you're going to form policy, you have to have a voting public that understands the issues, and then they can make an informed opinion. And if once they have all the right information in front of them and they still decide for an opinion that's different to mine, that's their right and that is fine. But as long as they have the right information. So part of my job as a science communicator is to inform people. I don't necessarily tell them how to think or what their opinion should be. But this is the information, and once you have the information, you can then act on it.
Mr. Smith, please tell us, what does it mean to live in a conservancy that lives off sustainable hunting? How does the community benefit from this sustainable hunting?
At the first instance, before the conservancy was not registered, the community benefited nothing. Community benefited nothing. And then the wildlife has to come and destroy field crops, come and kill livestock, and then the community did not benefit anything. And then later on, the community themselves started to communicate to each other to say we need to come up with the idea of forming a conservancy so that we all can also benefit from this wildlife that are coming to attack our crops, that are coming to destroy our livestock. So the community came with the aspiration of forming up a conservancy. So immediately when the conservancy was formed, and then we had a hunting contract, we had a partner who is hunting in Joti, starting from 2009 up to 30. So that person is giving us 2-point-something million annually that we are receiving as a benefit from trophy hunting. How is this person doing it? We have community game guards who are doing day-to-day activities in the field, looking at different species, elephants, hippo, hyenas, lions. We have a different population within the conservancy of those animals. So these duties of these people is to monitor, to see that there's no illegal people who are coming to destroy those animals. It's only a professional hunter who is allowed to go and hunt and brings money to the conservancy. And also he has employed some of the staff to his camp. And then when the money is in the office or in the account of the conservancy, as the committee and the community, we decide on how do we use the money to bring projects and how to bring employment to the communities. And then from here, I'll be taking you to the school. You will see the 2 blocks, which was built from the money of the trophy hunting. So there is a very big benefits from trophy hunting.
Ms. Anedia, what does it mean living here in the conservancy with wild animal? What is happening? What is the human-wildlife conflict that you're experiencing here?
I have 4 children. 3 that are getting to school. The other one is too small. I'm saying maybe it's 3 kilos to school. By the way, we have small villages, but there's a lot of bushes there, whereby the kids or the children, they are traveling a lot of kilometers coming to school. But in the way, you find elephant there. Sometimes the kids, they run away back home and tell us. We also escort the kids. We also will get some elephant there. Sometimes it's buffalo. We also stand there until when they cross and go is when we come to school. Sometimes our kids come late to school. And we also, when they knock off to school, we have to come as parents to come and pick them because we are scared something can happen between them because they are little children. When they run in the bush. In the bush there, they will find the elephant standing there. You see? We don't have guns. We don't have anything which we can use so that elephant they can run. So we are stuck here. So we are happy now when the trophy
when the hunters they come, sometimes it's they kill one along the way. You can take 3 to 2 people to 3 days. They are not seen next to the way. You find that kids they will go well to school, but if not, they are not going to school well.
So das heißeste Zeit des Tages und der Rinderhirte hat seine Rinder runtergebracht.
This is the hottest time of the day. It's when the cattle herder brings his animals to the water, and once they've been watered, he takes them back to the village. The hippo then come out of the water into the reeds in the late afternoon. They feed here and then they move on. Then the buffalo come from the island to drink. There's a balance between humans and the use of wild animals, humans with their cattle. But if we stop the hunting, if we ban it, if we remove trophy hunting, then these buffalo and hippo will no longer have any value to the community and they'll be poached.
Tot macht, der Trophäenjagd wegnimmt. Und diese Büffel und diese Hippo hat keinen Wert mehr.
The fishermen will arrive, uncontrolled, and the conservancy will disappear. The game guards will be gone, and then there's chaos here, and within 5 years, it will all be gone.
Und es herrscht wieder wie vor 15 Jahren Chaos hier. Alle Macht.
Hunting has a huge positive impact on the local community. And over the years, they've learned the value of their wild animals. It will really have a disastrous effect on conservation and biodiversity if we lose this habitat, just because there's been a knee-jerk reaction to an emotional outburst and not to the facts.
Nur weil wir auf Emotionen reagieren und nicht auf Fakten.
Yeah, the photo tourism, they don't come to Joti because we do not have a campsite, we do not have a lodge.
Korigas was the first registered conservancy in Namibia. Grootberg Lodge was almost entirely funded by conservation hunting. Income from conservation hunting finances the salaries of the Conservancy Admin Office, game guards, and trackers like myself. I track collared lions so that I can tell livestock farmers in the area of their movements. It's a proactive strategy that mitigates human-wildlife conflict. It's not foolproof, but it's effective most of the time. The collar transmits a signal that allows me to track a lion's position on a cell phone or on a laptop. I know most of the livestock farmers in the area. So when a lion moves in their area, I call them and advise them to make a fire near their bomas at night.
Mr. Bernardo Squibeb has been a guide in the Xwadi Conservancy for over 18 years. Mr. Squibeb is seit 18 Jahren guide.
The first thing which will happen if trophy hunting is banned, people will start with illegal hunting. Poaching will take place. The other thing which will happen is people will be very, very, very angry because they will nothing coming to their side. This, I mean the farmers themselves, and they are going, to change their mindset, what they have. They are not going to conserve it anymore, but they are going to destroy it because every animal which kills will be killed.
This farm is in a conservancy close to a place called Lion's Head, ironically. Last week, 4 lions killed 76 goats right here in this kraal. And it's a typical example of the human-wildlife conflict when you farm in an area where you have to share the landscape with wild animals. The farmer reported this incident to the ministry, and the Environment Department paid him 40,000 Namibian dollars. The compensation won't enable him to replace his losses, but it will go a long way to help rebuilding his herd. The African Foundation donated tarpaulins to use as screens around his kraal. That will provide some additional protection from predators.
While I was asleep in the house, the lions came, passed where your cars are parked, and went down that way, past the pig enclosure, and killed 73 goats and left. That was on Wednesday. They did not come back on Thursday, but they came back on Friday and killed another 2, and Saturday 1, which makes it 76 in total. The rangers were also sleeping here. The dog was barking, but when he was bitten in the neck, he stopped. Then there was silence. The lions didn't roar or growl. Nothing. No sound.
So they came silently while you were home?
Yes. They came quietly to kill the goats, so we weren't aware of them. So now I don't know. The government says that it's in their policy that they can only pay 500 per goat. But they know that you can't buy a goat for $500. If they at least talk to me and say, listen, our policy only allows for a $500 remuneration, then we can maybe give you a little bit of extra help. But still, this thing, hunting, shouldn't be stopped. But if that problem lion is hunted, it will make our lives a little bit more comfortable. At least we'll get some compensation for our losses.
They are coming every night to drink some water at the water balls at the dams, but after drinking water, they come to damage all our property. Trees, everything that we are having, the tanks are broken, everything. And this is the place of my grandparents. My husband grew up here. The graveyard is there. So we cannot just leave everything and move away because of elephants.
I get scared sometimes.
They must take the elephants to the zoos.
Are you interested in conservation? Are you interested in conservation outcomes? Are you interested in healthy populations of wildlife in Africa? And are you interested in people in Africa living with their wildlife in the long term? Because if that's what you genuinely are interested in, then trophy hunting, trying to ban it and prevent it is not the right way to go, because trophy hunting is a very important part of good conservation. And if you don't believe it sitting in Europe, come and visit us in Africa. We will take you and show you how it works so that you really understand it. And the messages that you're getting from the animal rights NGOs and community in Europe is not an honest message about conservation. It's not an honest message about conservation. An honest message about conservation is that well-managed hunting is a very important and essential part of good conservation.
We are a country that have proven it over and over and over again. And it's really unfortunate that these people don't know the practical effects that it will have on not only the habitat and the wildlife, but on myself, on my children, on my staff, on my workers, on the communities, on the people that are so reliant on it. And they don't have a choice. We don't have crop plantations because we don't have water. We don't have minerals, we don't have mining.
Most of the people, that means it's 5,000 members living in Zoti who are depending on trophy hunting. So what more if the trophy hunting is cut or is banned? What will happen? That means the 5,000 population, their lives will be affected because they will not have any benefits.
So as mothers, we have to feel sympathy for our kids and make sure that our kids are in the safe way. Because we cannot live with animals next to the villages. Even when you go to the bush to save yourself, you find the elephant is there. How can you do?
So they must leave Namibia alone because this belongs to us. It's our property, so we can sell them the time we want. We can hunt them the time we want. We can make business with them because this is things from which we are living. It's things from which we are making life out of. So I ask them, I beg them nicely to please leave handing out. Please leave our resources for us.
We traveled through this beautiful land of contrasts over the last 2 weeks and spoken to professional hunters and outfitters, as well as traditional hunters and community leaders in conservancies that have constantly dealt directly with the human-wildlife conflict. Conservation hunting is vitally important to the conservancies because it generates revenue, it provides employment, and it puts food on the table of the rural communities. Come to Namibia and see for yourself how we conserve our wildlife species, how we protect the Big Five, and conserve biodiversity. And while you are exploring this beautiful country and marvel at the abundant wildlife, ask yourself, am I making the right decision by supporting the call to ban trophy hunting? And am I making the right decision that will support the conservation of wilderness areas? And is my decision in the best interest of the people and wildlife?
Die Namibians gut kommt.